Hello, World Schooling families. Do you wish you had more opportunities to connect with others who understand the unique joys and challenges of traveling and learning on the go? Hi, I'm Suzy, and I'm excited to invite you to a special virtual World Schoolers meetup happening Friday, August 8th at 3 p.m. Mountain Standard Time. This is a chance for parents and kids alike to meet, share, and build community. We'll start with warm introductions, then move into small breakout groups to foster deeper connections. We'll finish up with a big group gathering, and the best part is you can join us for the whole hour or just pop in when it works for you and your family. To join this wonderful gathering, check the show notes, look for upcoming events on my website, or grab a calendar link directly from my Instagram bio. Can't wait to see you there. Also, if you're in Denver, Colorado, join us for the in-person World Schoolers Picnic on September 28th from 12 to 3. Look forward to seeing you. Now let's get on to the episode. Welcome to the Wander Slow Family Travel Podcast. Today, I'm joined by Moira. Welcome to the show. Please tell me more about you and your family.
Hi, thank you for having me. My son and I travel the U.S. full-time, and we have for a few years. I'm excited to be here and talk about it.
Where are you currently?
We're in upstate New York. We're heading to northern New Hampshire in a few days, where we do a camping trip every summer for a week. We've been in the South, so we've split our time between Florida and South Carolina for the last year.
Tell me more about your setup.
We house sit around the country.
Is that through Trusted House Sitters?
Yeah. When we first started this, we did a camping few weeks where we headed south. We were from New York. So we headed south for a few weeks and did the campground thing. And that was fantastic. But I cringed when I looked back at how much we spent on spots the entire time. I mean, we're spending $50 to $100 a night for places to stay. It's just ridiculous and not sustainable for what we're trying to do. Then I was introduced to Trusted House Sitters, and it's been fantastic because I want to slow crawl around the country and really have a chance to check out cities like a resident would experience them. So it's been a fantastic way to do that. My strategy has become we will pass through an area and find a short sit for a few days. If we like the vibe of the area and we want to come back, I'll look for a longer sit. If it's not something that we're feeling, then we move on to the next location. It's been a great way to cover the whole eastern half of the country. We've covered 26 states and have a solid idea of where we want to go back to, areas that we're not super called to. So it's been a great way to get an in-depth look.
What has your son's experience been with the pet sitting part of it?
So it's been great. I grew up on a small homestead in rural Alaska, and growing up, I always said I want my kids to be around animals. We fostered a couple cats over those early years, and he loves animals, but I want to travel. I remember growing up on the homestead, you can't leave. We had goats, we had sheep, we had all these animals that need to be fed every day. So we were never able to travel. The biggest struggle for me is letting go of being able to have pets of our own right now. And so what's great about this is we still get time with pets. We tend to lean toward cat sits. It's been great because he's really a cat person and would love to have a cat traveling with us, but it's just not doable right now. So it's the best of both worlds.
That's exactly what I was thinking. We've done some sits as well. And I love that you're just like in a real house. It's very comfortable. The pets are usually great. It's a way to mix the love for animals and travel. Remind me your son's age again.
He's 9. He'll be 10 in November.
Okay. Yeah. Mine are 5 and 8. So they like pets and animals, but they're not really doing all the work for them.
Yes, exactly.
So it's good to not make it permanent quite yet. Are you looking farther out, or just the farther out is if it's back to a location you want to go to?
You know what? All of the above. It's been 2 years of this now. It's kind of all over the board. At this point, we've got some sits that we've been back to, one specifically where we've spent several months at a time. It's in an amazing location in Florida. We lived in the Northeast in the New England area for a few years, so we've got friends. So I'm not as concerned about finding longer sits here because we want to bounce around.
I'm glad to hear from another Trusted House Sitter fan how it can work in your life. In the last year, how many nights do you feel like you've been able to stay somewhere on a sit? And is there any way you can quantify the savings?
I did write one of my Substacks on this. So I can go over the year of 2024. The entire year we spent 27 nights in Airbnbs. That was a total of about $1,700.
For an entire year.
That was the entire year. So we stayed with friends. We visited friends we met in Kentucky, up here in New York. We had friends to stay with. We've definitely stayed with friends here and there. But for the most part, it's been trusted house sitter back to back. So yeah, 27 nights out of the entire year. It takes some hustle to get that schedule to work out. There were a couple times like we were in Lexington, Kentucky for the month of May, and we had to hustle to northern New Hampshire to spend a week. And then I had to be back in St. Louis by the beginning of June. I did not plan this well, but I learned so much in that too. We ended up heading down to Florida and we were there for almost 5 months. So then I was like, you can't pry me out of this kitchen right now. I'm not going anywhere. All of that. Now I minus the driving hours that we would normally do just living someplace, because I'm going to be driving pretty much every day, no matter where I'm at. 167 hours of driving, and that was about 10,000 miles total for the year. So we did quite a bit of zigzagging the whole year. And now we have a sense of where we like and where we don't necessarily need to go back to.
I'd love to hear more about your personal travel story.
Okay.
What was one of your earliest travel memories and how your upbringing helped shape some of these travel philosophies that you have as an adult?
I was raised in very rural Alaska, not off-grid, but borderline off-grid. My dad was a farm kid from the Midwest. My mom was born in England. My grandma was a war bride after World War II. She moved to the States after World War II, but traveled back to the UK and stayed with her aunt every summer. So growing up, even though we didn't leave Alaska, it was lots of stories about those summers that she spent in the UK. Traveling. The stories were always alive for me, even though we weren't doing a ton of traveling. I would say my earliest travel memories that I created were I went to stay with my godmother for a weekend, and that was the first time I flew alone when I was about 14. When I was 17, I went from Alaska down to Oregon. My sister was in university at the time, so I stayed with her a bit. That's really when I started getting a love of wandering through new towns. In my 20s, I did quite a bit of traveling in Europe, wandering around. So it's always been there in my life. I took a break from it when my son was born to settle down and give him stability. But this isn't what I want to do. I think that he's up for it. I wouldn't necessarily have jumped into it if I didn't think it was a good fit for him too, if he needed to be in one place, but he doesn't. So I'm very thankful for that.
He picked up the travel bug from you.
I think so.
What are some of the family goals for this journey?
So what I have always wanted is any children that I have, I want them to be as comfortable in the middle of nowhere with no modern amenities around them and be able to survive. And I want them to be just as comfortable there as navigating a public transportation system in Europe or anywhere that they don't speak the language, where they can understand it and feel confident that they can figure it out. I wanted to head overseas, but I decided this is a great opportunity for us to get to know our country. And it's massive. And so there's plenty to explore for a while.
My son looks at a map and he's like, Alaska's so big and it's so far away. So I can see how when you grow up there, you're like, actually, there is so much more to explore. You mentioned your son is on board for these travels. What does he think about jumping around to different house sits? He likes being around the cats. What are his perspectives on your travel journey so far?
So he does really well with it. One thing that I've been very conscious about is when we make a friend in a location, that we make a really strong attempt to get back to that location and stay in contact with those people. Like we've ran into a couple other road schooling families on our travels. And like Christmas last year, we were in Charleston, South Carolina, and they were in Lexington, Kentucky, which is not a short drive. But we buckled up and headed to Lexington for Christmas. So doing those things, keeping in mind when we do make connections and revisiting them. And honestly, what I find a lot when we live in one location is you still don't see people that frequently, right? Like you can be in the same city as someone and it's 6 months and you don't see them. So I just try to do that on a much larger scale. On his birthday, we weren't around anyone that we knew in that location, but we got phone calls from 5 or 6 different people. and we got to do video chats and connect with them. I think that what makes it really doable for him is that we still get to maintain those friendships as we're traveling. So it's not like we're just dropping everything when we leave a location.
I love that. That is definitely a way to stay in connection. And there are so many ways with technology to keep in touch. I found that with one of my son's really good friends back home. They play some games together. He'll call through my phone to his mom so they can talk a little bit. And I think if you can keep those connections up, they can pick back up right where they left off once they connect again. I'd love if you could tell us more about your approach to education while traveling. What does schooling and learning look like for your family?
Yes, I was unschooled my entire childhood. So I've never been to school. I always assumed that I would do the same with my kids. I knew that was the direction I was going to go. I've never felt like I needed to stay in one location for that. We do unschooling full time, and it's part of our everyday life.
What does a typical day look like?
I don't think there's such a thing as a typical day, honestly. They're all so varied. One of the last things we went through was talking about what he wants to do when he grows up, and he wants to be a welder. Because as a welder, you can travel all over and do remote jobs, maintain traveling, and make really good money. There's so many places that they need welders. And at 9, he's a bit young to learn welding, just a little bit young. What we got to is soldering. Soldering is a great way to start because you can learn the fundamentals of what you would, turn into welding. We were able to do research and figure out what that entails. It was a learning process for me. We were able to put together a whole packet of what this soldering kit would look like, order it, and then he spends time learning how to solder. That was a few weeks ago. There's kind of a break on that. And now we've went through a couple different things, but talking a lot about robotics. Again, we actually carry around with us this robotics kit that he's already built, or Legos. There's a common theme. He really loves creating and designing things. He also has a very physical side. We're back in New York where we lived for a couple years where we did jujitsu. So we're back at his old jujitsu gym and we're going to every jujitsu class for kids. There's not a typical day. Depending on where we're at, he was learning surfing, especially on the East Coast. You've got so many storms out in the ocean that sometimes we'd go 2 or 3 weeks and we couldn't get in. And then, the water opens up. It doesn't really matter what our other plans are. We're dropping everything and he's getting in the water to work on his surfing. The only constant is it's constantly not the same.
If someone was curious, they hadn't heard of unschooling before, how would you describe that to them?
Okay, so it's child-led. When we think about education, there's a lot of ideas that as adults we've come up with. These are the things that are important to learn. And we segment them into subjects. So reading, writing, and arithmetic. Unschooling touches on all of those. The way that I do it and the way I was raised doing it is that you're going to find all the subjects in something you're interested in. You're just not going to find it because you're looking for math. As a kid, we formulated all of our own animal food. You have to learn when you have a milk goat, it needs different nutrition than if you're raising a pig for market. You're learning math because you're formulating, and it's not just this math problem on a piece of paper that's not attached to anything. You want your animals to thrive. So you're learning math to be able to formulate the best diet so that they are thriving. So you're going to find all the subjects, but you don't think in terms of subjects. You think in terms of what makes you come alive? What are you interested in? Because it believes at a very foundational level that we're designed to want to learn. Let's foster that want of learning and follow those things that light you up. And you will find the subjects in them without thinking about it that way.
It's true that there's so many things to experience all around us, like math, reading and writing. It all comes up in one way or another. How do you balance between supporting an interest and guiding it further, or letting them decide when they're ready to move on? I think sometimes when parents are thinking of world schooling or going on the road, they do think, how am I going to teach my child? And so maybe they're looking for curriculum. And if someone was like, actually, I do want to step back and practice more unschooling, what would be their role in that?
Okay, so for me, human design, which is what I do for work, is the best tool we have. We hear all the time that people are different and have different ways of thinking, but there's not a lot of understanding of what does that actually look like in day-to-day life. And for me, human design really lays out We all make decisions differently. There are people out there that do really well at initiating new things. And there are people that's just not how they work. I'm what is called a generator. When it's something I care about and I'm interested in, I have endless amounts of energy to do that. Like, try to tell me that I'm supposed to be interested in something that I don't care about, then it's drudgery. But not everybody is designed to have that amount of energy. There are people that are here to initiate and start things and not complete them. If we expect that everyone is supposed to do X, Y, and Z, and that we all work exactly the same, that's where the frustrations can really come in. To understand our kids and how they're different from us is such a powerful tool. I'll use an example of my son and I. So I make decisions very quickly. If you ask me if I'm interested in something, my gut is like yes or no. Right? If I try to override that, I generally am in for a problem because I'm just not going to have energy. Now, my son, he also has his gut tell him yes or no to things, but he's a more emotional kind of person. So he needs a little bit of time. So I can give him an option and he can be really excited about it. But if I give him a couple days, then he will be much happier with whatever he chooses. Understanding how we're different is where it needs to start, because we cannot overlay the same recipe on each person. So the more we can understand how we're different, that's where our power is. And then we can trust that each person is really designed to attract the things that they need to and support that happening. So we don't have to figure it out for them. We just have to support them in their process.
That makes sense. It sounds like the first step is really understanding yourself and how you learn and react, and then also your child and how they learn and react. Where could someone read or understand or take a quiz to tell them which category they are?
There is the typical human design that uses tropical astrology. What I use is based on sidereal astrology. Sidereal is used outside of the Western world. I find it far more accurate to who we are right now on this planet. I pull charts for people and I have a free 5-minute soul reads. It pulls from the sidereal astrology. It lays out your type, authority, and strategy. There are different energy types, and that's how our aura works, where we are either drawing things in to us, so we need to respond to the things in front of us, or we're here more to inform on bigger systems. The foundational piece is, how are we entering into a decision? How are we deciding where we're putting our energy? This gives you those first pieces, that doorway into the energy type. And then you can look at your energy type and your kid's energy type and see how they work together or how they can challenge each other.
I'm going to check that out. This is a good segue into talking about the financial and logistical side. How are you funding your unschooling, world schooling adventures?
It's been quite the journey because I am a trained role for many years. That requires you stay in a location and have an office, and I did that. I love the work. I will always see everything I do through a Rolfer's eyes, but I had to set that aside when I wanted to hit the road. I've shifted over into helping families who want to shift out of the public education system and into homeschooling, specifically the deschooling process, thinking about what education needs to look like so that we can see the possibilities. Then I shifted into embracing the human design aspect, helping families who are struggling and want to be on the road, and also business branding. I have a background in branding and helping entrepreneurs who want to align their work closer to how their own energy works. So that's where I'm at now. And it's been so much fun. I really love helping people design businesses that align with their energy.
How have you been finding families to work with?
It started more in person. I used to run a play event when we lived in one location. I had a pop-up play event for a few years in upstate New York. And then it was word of mouth through people that I had made face-to-face contact with. I felt like I was really good at this business when it was in a location. And it's that shift fully online. So now, even if I meet someone face-to-face and we're going to work together, we're doing it online. I need to keep edging that direction. because I don't want to be held to any location. It's been a shift over the last few years, but it really started when my son was about 6 months old. So we're going on 9 years.
The flexibility with remote and being able to choose when and where you work is invaluable. You mentioned how house sitting has been able to greatly reduce your accommodation parts of your
Yeah.
annual or monthly budget. Is there a budget that you work within?
I feel like it goes up and down. What I've really been working on is trust that the universe will deliver. I just say all the time, divine and perfect timing. It will work out, and it always does, but it takes a lot of trust. If I tried to overthink it too much, there's no way I ever would have started.
Any financial advice to others looking to start traveling more? Do you recommend house sitting or anything that helps make this lifestyle work for you?
Honestly, I don't know how we would do it without the house sitting for the last couple of years. I've been able to focus on my business fully and completely, which has been amazing. It's not a forever thing. I think by the end of this year, we're going to stop doing the house sitting. I would like to head to Southeast Asia, shift things a little bit. It's been a fantastic couple years of doing it.
That's good. If a family was transitioning to unschooling and wanted to work with you, what could that process look like?
I do one-on-one consults where we can spend an hour or two going over questions. Being a lifelong unschooler myself, a lot of times the questions people have are, how does this translate into adult life? It can be a consult. I can also work on over a few months where we check in every couple weeks about the process. Human design is an element of that, pulling the charts, and let's talk about who you are as a family and how everyone works together. That makes the process much easier. It's important for the adults to understand what they think about education and to be able to undo some of that. When you can undo some of your assumptions about what you think education needs to look like, there is so many options out there that become clearer, right? And I think for anyone who has ever went to public school or the traditional model, spending a good chunk of time deschooling is probably the best gift you can give yourself.
I can see how parents might need more guidance in that aspect. Kids can be quite adaptable and move on to the next thing quickly, whereas a parent might be feeling a little lost through that process. And if you are spending a lot more time together, it can be really important to understand each other a little better.
I think that's a big shift in the last few years. There's a lot of people homeschooling that never considered it. I always expected that I would. It was a natural evolution as he started getting older. But I can't imagine that transition from just assuming you're going to do it one way to all of a sudden considering a very different way. That's an amazing thing to take on.
Have you found that the resources and support for homeschoolers has increased over the last couple of years?
I definitely think that it has. I think just having more people. When I was being unschooled in the 80s, there was like nobody. Honestly, we didn't call it unschooling when I was a kid. It wasn't until adulthood and I decided I was going to have my own kids and I was looking at where homeschooling was and I was like, oh, there's a term for it. I think that just having more people out there and more experiences. Now you've got a solid amount of people that were homeschooled themselves growing up. So you can see, oh, they turned out pretty okay. A lot of them have went on to universities, have done kind of all of the things that were assumed for a long time homeschool kids just couldn't participate. And now companies are not looking for four-year degrees in the same way. They're actively looking for homeschool students to enroll in university. It doesn't have the barriers that it used to have.
What are some resources you found to be beneficial?
So if we go to books, there's one book specifically that I recommend. So John Taylor Gatto's book, Dumbing Us Down, like top of the list. All of John Taylor Gatto's work is fantastic. And for people that don't know, he was voted the #1 teacher in New York State in the 90s and promptly quit and wrote a book saying, I'm really good at doing what we do in schools, and you don't want this happening to your kids. It's not the curriculum, it's the bell dinging and the subjects where you have to stop being interested in one thing and quickly change to the next subject. He lays it out beautifully. He's a fantastic writer, so it's a very engaging read, and it's not a long read. I would say that's a fantastic resource because before you can move on to what's possible, we have to be objective about what we're dealing with currently. Facebook is great for groups and being able to connect with people. And I see a lot of what happens is there's people that talk and kind of connect, but then we need to meet in person. I love social media and I love online for being able to connect, but we've got to take it a step past that and really meet in person with people, set up play dates, and not wait for someone else to create the play date. Like, set it up and be the leader in that. The community needs a lot more leaders.
Part of keeping it real, though, is also discussing the realities of long-term travel. What are some of the struggles or challenges that you and your family have experienced on your travels?
I actually feel like I'm kind of going through that now. We're in an area that we've lived before. When you leave, people just assume you're gone. If people aren't in the traveling lifestyle, it can be hard to maintain those friendships. So we come back into town ready to meet up, but their schedule is already full. That can be a hard thing. You can't just pick up where you left off because they've continued on with their life. We've made friends that live on the road too, so they understand that. But I would say that's a challenge. It's strange to be back in what we would consider a hometown and not have the contacts. People have left or moved on. So that's bittersweet. I love not having a whole lot of stuff. I've gotten rid of most of our stuff. But right now we're going to go camping in northern New Hampshire and it's going to be pouring rain all week, apparently. So I'm like, oh no, we don't have rain boots because he's ran out of rain boots. It's moving stuff around. It takes another level of organization. You don't just have an attic to throw the winter gear in. Then whenever you need it, it's still sitting there, right? We got rid of it. There was no need, and he probably would have grown out of it anyway. True. You know, those little day-to-day things you take for granted. We show up to a location and we don't already have the fridge with condiments like ketchup and mayo. You have to go buy all of that stuff. And then when you leave, you're trashing what you haven't used. And then you get to the next location and you're buying the condiments again. Who buys ketchup 12 times a year? It's little things like that that are challenging. You learn how to work with them.
Stuff management still persists, even if trying to choose a minimalist lifestyle, it's never ending. But to finish on a positive note, what are some current family wins right now?
Well, you know what? It's really fun. My son is at this age where he still really likes hanging out with mom, which is super cool. I don't know how many more years I have at that, but I feel like I'm going to be good to like 11 and 12. It's really fun to hang out with him and watch him grow up and explore. Our favorite thing is to go into a new town, walk around, look at the shops, go into the thrift stores, find a good latte, learn about the town, find a playground. It's not the same playground year after year. We get to explore and be like, remember that one playground in Charlotte? Or remember that barbecue we got in Wilmington? I love that part of it.
The variety can be really helpful when you're in new locations. Playgrounds are, at the end of the day, a playground. They're so different in different places that it's a way to make something novel again. And kids love that. Is there anything else that you want to share that I haven't asked about yet?
I love talking about this. This is the thing that lights me up. So I'm always accessible. If anybody wants to chat, feel free to reach out because I have endless amounts of energy to talk about this stuff.
And if people do want to connect, where can they find you?
So the best place is going to be moiramills.com. My email is connect@moiramills.com.
Sounds good. I'll make sure to put all those links in the show notes. And I really appreciate you sharing more about your journey with your family and unschooling and house sitting. It sounds like it's been a blast. So thank you so much for sharing.
Thank you for having me.